Hey yo, welcome to Hot Chop PTCG, formerly known as the Slowpoke World. As of recording, Gardevoir just dropped about an hour and a half ago, so I thought, I'm gonna go buy Gardevoir. I'm gonna play some games and give you guys a cracking first impressions and an early build guide and strategies so you can dominate with Gardevoir as well. Sound good? Let's have a look. But real quick before I get into the video, I must thank Pokemon themselves for providing me the resources and sponsoring this video so I can get Gardevoir nice and fast for you. That's pretty cool, eh? Thank you so much, Pokemon. So if I had to describe Gardevoir in 4 words, I would say best crowd control Pokemon. Gardevoir's sort of damage in like a sort of tight sphere is absolutely incredible. Really good for sort of pushing opposing Pokemon off goalposts or off certain territories or in any kind of defensive or offensive situation, allowing your team to sort of push and hold some territory and stuff like this. Not to mention piling a ton of damage into Zapdos, Rotom and Dreadnought. But I'm getting ahead of myself now. Let's have a look at Gardevoir. So if you're playing Gardevoir, you'll start off as a Volts, obviously. You'll hit level 6, you'll then become a Curlier. And when you hit level 10, you will hit Gardevoir. That's one thing I quickly will note now. They sort of balance Gardevoir's really insane damage output by the fact that until you hit level 10, you won't be fully evolved. But the moves are incredible. Let's talk about them. So we mentioned our basic attack here as Gardevoir and what it does. It is a range attack, similar range as like a Greninja range attack, right? What happens is every third hit you do will have a little bit of splash damage upon impact. That's pretty cool. But anyone in that radius of that splash damage will have lowered special defense for a little bit of time. Now this is really cool because as you're going to see later with the rest of our moves, our whole kit is like designed to just throw damage in a tight area and just go bonkers with it. And having this move sort of lower special defense will sort of increase the effectiveness of all our other moves. It's pretty gnarly, I'm not going to lie to you. So upon starting the game, you have the choice of 2 moves, either Teleport or Confusion. Now, they're both actually really good. Let's talk about Confusion first. This is the one I recommend. This is like a straight line sort of blast range attack, okay? It does a pretty decent damage considering it's early game, but what I really like about this move is the range. This has a long range, similar to like a Greninja's Water Shuriken, I feel. And what this is really good for is, you know, getting some early kills in the jungle, obviously, maybe stealing some from the opponents. But what this is really good for, once you've done your jungle route and you're going top or bottom, let's say you're sort of ganking an opponent and they sort of get away, they might use their eject button, try and get away, and a lot of the times you won't be able to get them. The range on this Confusion will definitely mean you will be able to reach some cheeky picks and hopefully advance some ground early on in the early game. It's just a really good move. I'm very impressed with Confusion. The other move you can pick from is Teleport, right? And Teleport, think of Teleport as like an eject button with a much smaller cooldown. This is actually really good as well. Let's say you've been caught out of position, you've been a bit aggressive with your Confusion trying to chase someone. So you chase, you've picked a Pikachu, and as they always running flat at you, you know you're in trouble. You can Confusion, try and get back to your teammates real fast. It's also stacked with a jet button as well, just to cover a whole lot of ground. So as a defensive tool, we all know how good a eject button can be. This is essentially that. But not only that, you can use Teleport as an offensive weapon as well, right? Let's say in that scenario where like a Pikachu was always running away, to really cover a lot of ground and have that Confusion cover range that has no right to be covering, you can teleport forwards, then line up the Confusion, okay? Or let's say you see an opponent trying to cap some points, if you want to stop them, you can teleport, you sort of stop them capping those points as well. So don't forget, you can use teleport offensively and defensively. But saying all that, I still pick Confusion first at level 1, just so you have some early game offensive potency, because your attack, while it is pretty good, you don't want to rely on it till level 3, you know what I mean? Gardevoir's ability is Synchronize. It's actually a pretty cool one, and it provides a way of getting damage to an opponent, which they definitely won't be expecting. What this Synchronize does, any hindrances or movement speed penalties that you have, as well as any damage over time conditions such as poison or burn, those damage calculations will be passed back to the opponent. Now, this is on the cooldown. I don't know how long the cooldown is, I'm not going to lie to you. Hard to test on your own. I'll try and leave in the description once I find it out. But that's going to be a way, let's say a Venusaur poisons you, it'll fling the damage back to the Venusaur, or a Cinderace burns you, anything like this. And this is going to be really good for just providing a lot of extra damage that the opponent won't be expecting, and hopefully result in some really good picks as well. Or at the very least, they can see their health bar going down, they think, damn, I'm going to have to give up this position, or at least try and run back to a berry or a goalpost, allowing you to advance, you know, try and hold on some Combi hives, anything like this. It's pretty cool. Right then, so let's say you've been playing your Volt, you've hit the jungle, right, you've come down, got a cheeky gank or two, you are now level 6, congratulations, you're now a Curlier. That's pretty cool. But now you have a choice of 2 moves, and both of these moves are bonkers, and by far my favorite ones to use as Gardevoir. You have Future Sight, or you have Side Shock. Let's take a look at them. So let's talk about Side Shock first. I think I lean more towards this one just for overall map control, what it provides. It's really unique. What Side Shock does is you're going to line up the attack, right? You're going to hit the button, and it's going to pick the circle, and it's going to hit that same circle 3 times, like boop, 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 okay? Now, each time you get a successful hit, the recharge comes down a little bit. I think it goes down to something like 6 seconds if you hit all 3. And what this is really good for is just pinning it on like a goalpost, right? When yours or your opponent's, or just pinning it on a certain area, there's like 2 or 3 Pokemon, and the damage this does is insane. You can see from the clips, the damage that this is doing is not, especially if all 3 hit, one of the best sort of territorial attacks I've seen, especially combined with the cooldown bonus. My lord, you can throw a lot of damage out of this Gardevoir. Now imagine that you've hit your opponents with a 3rd basic attack. They have lower special defense. Ooh. This is very good. Now, but the big problem with Side Shock is you have to be really careful when you use it. Because as good as it is, if they all hit, if they all miss, which is very easy to do if you're not leading targets correctly or anything like this, you're now stuck with a big, hefty 10-second cooldown. And that sucks, or you don't want to have a 10-second cooldown. So the problem is with this, once you aim it as well, you can't really continue to aim it. You can't use the right stick to aim. You have to only sort of move, and you can sort of slightly line it up, because when you use it after the first one, you see like a little aim up where the second one's going to go. You can sort of line that one up, and after that you're sort of firing blind again. So this is a really good attack, but the problem is with stuff like Lucario, Talonflame, Cinderace, Pokemon dart around so much. Zaora, Pikachu, like it's very easy to land one, but landing all 3, unless you're sort of using it as a territorial or an objective based situation, it's actually hard to land all 3, not gonna lie. Like if you're trying to hit like a Venusaur, maybe a Ninetale, something like, or a Snorlax that doesn't move, you know, too much, it's pretty good. If you're trying to like line up picks on really fast Pokemon, I wouldn't expect to hit all 3, unfortunately, and get that good call. I can see in very competitive territorial battles, you really sort of stop a lot of Pokemon from walking into that Side Shock, because it does so much damage. It's insane. But one really good use case for Side Shock is wild Pokemon, right? Against stuff like Dreadnought, Rotom, and Zapdos, where you know they're not moving. This thing just piles damage on, and maybe could be really good for getting some steals of Zapdos. Let's say you haven't really had a good position against Zapdos and your opponent team's almost finished them. You can sort of use Gardevoir, jet button in there, bing, Side Shock, and steal it. That would be pretty naughty, not gonna lie to you. So I've talked a lot about Side Shock. Let's take a look at Future Sight. Kind of similar in the fact that it's going damage in a circle, but what Future Sight does is it's gonna, you aim it, it'll take about 1 to 1.5 seconds to sort of do the damage, right? And once it does the damage, if it hits, you get a better cooldown, and I think it goes down to like 4 or 3 seconds. So let's say you're really accurate with this Future Sight, you can really fire this off multiple times. And it does decent damage as well, not as much as Side Shock, granted, but it does do really good damage as well. And in combination with your faster recharges on the other move, you can really start piling damage on super fast with this. It's pretty gnarly. So again, in a similar vein to Side Shock, this is really good for just locking down territory and locking down certain choke points of the map. But I feel as if it's a lot easier to line up quick picks with this than it is with Side Shock, just because it's got such a reduced cooldown. But in a similar vein, you sort of have the same negatives with this as you would with Side Shock, in the fact that, let's say you line up the Future Sight, wait a second, if the opponent moves, which they most likely will, then it's gonna miss, and it's really hard to predict sometimes where someone's gonna go. Let's say you try and line up a Zaora with this, it's gonna be tough, because you know Zaora is just like bouncing all over the shop, right? So I think it's really tough between this and the Side Shock. I lean more towards Side Shock just because there's so much more damage in a concentrated area, really quick cooldown. I'm actually in editing and I realized once Future Sight gets upgraded, provided you hit, there's an instant recharge. You can just keep firing off provided you keep hitting. So if you're really accurate and you're really good at leading Pokemon and guessing where they're gonna go, you can throw out some insane damage. But even in saying that, still I think I prefer Side Shock just for its ease of use. But if you, like I said, if you're really good with Future Sight, you can probably be throwing damage out wherever, baby. There's one for you to practice. When you get to level 8, you have the choice of 2 moves. Again, these are both really good. You have Psychic and you have Moonblast. Let's take a look at these. So what Moonblast does, it has a 6-second cooldown. You sort of launch a cone ahead of you, right? Does a little bit of damage. It pushes you back as well, so you get a little bit of space. Obviously, Gardevoir is a ranged character, so you want to have a good bit of space between you and your opponent. And then the Pokemon that's closest to the cone is unable to move for about a second. So this is pretty good for 2 reasons, right? It gives you a little bit of space, provides a little bit of damage, and it halts the sort of aggressive Pokemon that's trying to hunt you down. So let's say imagine like a Pikachu or a Zayora is hunting you down like you know they do. You just be like, stop, move back, maybe use eject button, get some room, start firing off your stuff again. The problem I find with this is the range is really small, I guess it has to be, and the damage isn't really the greatest. I'm not gonna lie to you, the distance it pushes you back really isn't that great. But it is worth noting, when Moonblast gets upgraded, it does provide you a small shield when you use it, so that can be pretty handy if you're on the receiving end of an opponent's gank, or you're just getting targeted by like a Zayora or a Talonflame or something. That could be pretty helpful. But I think the one I prefer, this is a lot more of an offensive threat, is Psychic. Psychic starts off with a 7-second cooldown. What it is a ranged attack, so you fling it out in front of you, very similar to Confusion in that respect. It will do damage, but what it does is sort of leaves like a little sphere, and the sphere will just keep going doing damage like this in a little area of effect, and that does a lot of damage over time. So as you can see, a really good sort of offensive, defensive kind of weapon. You know, again, if you see loads of Pokemon on a goal post, you can fling the Psychic in, it will do some damage. Then maybe fire your Future Sights or your Side Sharks, doing loads of damage. And you can sort of see, you can sort of imagine just by describing these moves, like the sort of build and how this Gardevoir works, right? It's just doing damage in a concentrated area from range. So I prefer Psychic just because of the insane offensive potential it does bring. But then Moonblast does provide that little bit of a shield and a little pushback. Can be a bit more of a defensive option as well. And then our Unite move is Fairy Singularity. And you know what? We all know how Gardevoir does. It'd be weird if the Unite move didn't do this. It basically creates a big sphere. It sucks opponents' Pokemon in, does a lot of damage, and lowers their movement speed by a ton whilst it's in there. This is insane. If you catch 3 or 4 Pokemon here, provided all your team are just like barreling in there and you're firing off your stuff, it's not uncommon to get like, you know, 3 kills with this. It is nuts, and it's actually one of my recommended sets runs the Buddy Shield, just so you can try and get as much value from this as possible and stay alive, because once this is up, the opponent's Pokemon aren't going anywhere. They are stuck and they're receiving big damage. It is pretty gnarly. So in regards to held items, I feel as if there's a few ways you can play it, right? I think Wise Glasses is pretty good, you know, giving you a flat increase to special attack. Obviously, I'm a special attacker, so being able to just increase damage on all our special attacks seems pretty gnarly. I quite like the idea of Shell Bell, because, you know, being able to restore HP, because even though you're going to be firing off from a range, you will be taking residual damage from like Pikachus and Zayoras. Once your opponent sees realize how much damage you can pull out and how good you are at locking down sort of areas of the map, they are going to try and team up and try and pick you off. Having a Shell will be nice just to keep your HP up in those situations. And that third slot is pretty up for contention in my opinion. I've been messing about with Buddy Barrier mostly, just so when I start that Unite move, I can stay alive as long as possible and can get the maximum value from that. Obviously, Buddy Barrier gives you a shield when you start your Unite move. That's what I think. That's the main one I've been using. I've been seeing pretty good success with that. Floatstone is obviously a pretty good one, just increasing your movement speed at all times. Can't really argue with this. You could even try special attack specs. So obviously, every time you score a goal, your special attack increase. This will mean your late game as Gardevoir would be gnarly, provided you've been trying to push for goals. Now that does kind of get a little bit counterproductive with Gardevoir. You want to try and hand back and throw loads of damage down from a range. But if you're going for this build, maybe you want to go for more like a Moonblast kind of build, a bit more defensive, getting close to your Moonblast, try and cap some goals, and by the end game, the special attack's going to be scary. In regard for battle items, I feel as if all of these battle items are obviously good and they all have their uses. Eject button is probably the safest one. So, you know, if you do get ganged up on by Zayora and Absol, maybe even Charizard, you can try and ping away and keep firing off from a distance. X attack could be good for just, you know, if your teammates get carried, you have to sort of try and hold the fort on your own. You can hit that button, try and throw as much damage as possible. Maybe even X speed for a similar vein for the eject button, just trying to close distance, trying to get away, I should say. Or if you use it offensively, if you need to push for an objective, you can sort of go in a lot faster. That could be pretty cool as well. But you know what? I'm always a fan of a good potion every now and then. Just being able to just stay in the fight longer proves pretty good as well. So my overall first impressions of Gardevoir and how to play it. Gardevoir's offensive package is nuts. The amount of damage you can throw down is honestly insane. Like, you can just push opponents clean off goalposts. You can really capture, you know, Dreadnought, Rotom, Zapdos really well with Gardevoir. The damage, the amount of picks you can get. If your opponents sort of play really close together, they've got lots of big Pokemon like a Snorlax or a Ninetales. Pokemon don't really move around that much or that fast. My lord, the damage output is nuts. But they have balanced that mad damage output in two ways. The first way is that trying to line up good damage, consistent damage with Psyshock and Future Sight is actually pretty hard. There's some of the more harder abilities to use in the sense that a lot of the times you have to guess where the opponents are going to be. If your opponents just move around of it, then you're sort of out of luck, as it were. So that's the main way that they've balanced it. Another way they've balanced Gardevoir is the fact that you won't really get to Gardevoir very fast. You don't get to Gardy until level 10. And that's pretty late, right? And you get to Kirby at level 6. But that's kind of also balanced in the sense that your early game Confusion Teleport actually gives you a decent little early game package. But yeah, obviously your hit points and that are so low. So I think Gardevoir is going to require a lot of practice. If you can get really good at aiming those Future Sights and Psyshocks, you will be rewarded, let me tell you. I can't wait to get some more gameplay with Gardevoir, that's for sure. If you like what you saw, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for me, okay? I'm going to try and put out more Unite content for you guys. And one more time, thank you to Pokemon for sponsoring this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.